Welcome to my channel. Today, we're diving into 3 terrifying fire drill stories that are supposed to keep us safe. But sometimes, they unlock something much darker. You'll never look at those flashing lights the same way again. It was the kind of fire drill that shouldn't have raised alarms, the kind that you expect to happen once a month, a rote interruption of the daily grind. Students groan, teachers check their watches, and administrators bark out orders while consulting clipboards. But on that October morning in Oak Ridge High School, the fire alarm screamed to life with a pitch that didn't quite sound right. Something slightly off, like the wheeze of a person trying to mimic a machine. Most dismissed the difference. It was old equipment, after all. That's what everyone assumed. Jamie Phillips, a junior who usually welcomed any excuse to leave class, felt a slight chill crawl over his arms despite the unseasonably warm weather. The air had the cloying scent of scorched plastic, even before they stepped into the hallway. That was the first detail that stuck with him. There was no fire, and yet the air already smelled wrong. His teacher, Mr. Davenport, was slow to react. He was scribbling on the whiteboard explaining Newton's third law when the alarm blared overhead. Jamie noticed that the man flinched, not just at the sound, but as if something unseen had brushed past him. His hand paused mid-sentence, marker trembling slightly. He turned, pale-faced, toward the class. "All right?" he said too softly, then cleared his throat. "Line up. You know the drill." The students began their shuffle toward the door. The hallway was quickly filled with bodies, all moving with the kind of sluggish inevitability of people who believed they had done this 100 times before. But Jamie, walking behind Tanya Rhodes and in front of Marcus Bentley, kept looking back at the classroom door. He hadn't seen it close, yet now it was shut. He didn't remember hearing the click, but there it was, sealed tightly. And for just a second, he thought he saw someone inside. A shadow moved across the windows. Only Mr. Davenport had stayed behind to grab the attendance sheet, but the shape was taller, much taller. They turned the corner toward the south stairwell. Oak Ridge High was an older building, 3 floors and built like a concrete bunker with yellowing tiles and doors that stuck in their frames. This drill, like all the others, would funnel the students out the back lot. But as they descended, the building groaned, loud and long, like something waking up. "Did you feel that?" Tanya asked, gripping the handrail. Jamie nodded. "Yeah. Like the stairs moved." "No way," Marcus scoffed from behind him. "It's just the mass of students. Probably the building settling." But Jamie didn't think buildings were supposed to feel like they were breathing. They reached the first-floor landing, and something was already wrong. The lights overhead flickered, not like a dying bulb, but in a syncopated rhythm, like code. Morse, maybe. Tanya paused, staring up at the lights as if mesmerized, then stumbled. A hand shot out to steady her. It was Mr. McConnell, the assistant principal. He was pale and sweaty, his tie hanging loose like a noose. He didn't speak to her, didn't even look at her. His eyes were fixed on the hallway, where dozens of students were pushing forward, a crush of bodies that didn't seem to care about maintaining order. "Move quickly," he muttered. "They're not waiting this time." Jamie turned. Who's not waiting? But Mr. McConnell had already disappeared into the flow of students. That was the second thing Jamie would remember later. The fear in an adult's eyes, the kind of raw, unfiltered panic that no teacher was supposed to show. They stepped into the main hallway. It was dimmer here. The fluorescent bulbs above them cast long, sickly shadows. The fire alarm was still blaring, but now it seemed distant, muffled somehow. Jamie checked the ceiling tiles. They weren't vibrating the way they should have been. Sound that loud should have rattled things loose. But everything was still, except for the fire doors. They were all closed. In every previous drill, the red double doors at the hallway intersections were open. Students flowed through without a second thought. But now each one was firmly shut. Jamie and his classmates stopped short. "Someone's gotta open it," Tanya whispered. "It's just a drill, right?" Jamie reached forward and pushed. The door didn't budge. He pressed harder. Nothing. Marcus joined him, grunting, adding his weight. The metal groaned slightly, but it didn't open. Behind them, the hallway seemed darker. Jamie turned around and saw that the students were backing away. Not all of them. Some kept walking forward, eyes glassy, lips moving as if whispering to themselves. "Something's wrong," Jamie said. And then the lights above them shattered. One by one, pop, 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 glass rained down, and the hallway plunged into stuttering darkness. The only light now came from the flickering red emergency signs above doors, their glow warped and weak. That's when they heard the footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, not running, marching. From behind the locked fire doors, something was approaching. Jamie grabbed Tanya's hand. Back to the stairwell. But it was already too late. The hallway seemed longer than before, stretched impossibly. Students at the far end began screaming. Jamie saw one boy, a senior he didn't know, banging on a classroom door, begging to be let in. The door opened, but what stepped out wasn't a teacher. Jamie didn't see it clearly. Only the shape, impossibly thin and tall, dressed like a firefighter but with a face that glowed like hot coals. It reached for the student with a hook that had once been a hand. The screaming stopped abruptly. Tanya yanked Jamie's arm. "Run!" They pushed through the crowd, dodging the students frozen in place or chanting softly to themselves. Some turned to look at them as they passed. Eyes entirely black, tears of ash streaking their cheeks. They made it to the stairwell. Jamie slammed the door behind them. Marcus was there too, panting. "What the hell is this?" Jamie turned to Tanya, but she was looking at the wall. Words were scratched into the paint. Dozens of overlapping messages, clawed out by fingernails or keys or worse. The fire never ended. It comes when we forget. No drills, only warnings. They're trapped on floor 3. A sudden, pounding sound came from the landing above. Not footsteps, fists, pounding rhythmically. Then, a voice. "Help, please. It's not a drill." It was a girl's voice, young, terrified. Jamie started upward. Tanya grabbed his arm. "What are you doing? There's someone up there. It's a trap. Didn't you see the writing? They're trapped up there." The voice came again, closer. "Please, they're going to burn me. I can't get out." Jamie hesitated. He looked at Marcus, who had pulled out his phone. No signal. "They jammed it," Marcus whispered. "This isn't part of any plan." Jamie pushed forward. "I can't leave someone up there." He moved up the stairs, each step echoing. The 3rd floor was supposed to be sealed during drills. That's what he remembered. But the door creaked open easily. Smoke filled the corridor. Not thick, but acrid, clinging. Jamie pulled his sleeve over his mouth. The hallway stretched forward. The lockers on either side warped and blackened like they'd been through a fire. But there hadn't been a fire at Oak Ridge High in 20 years. Except, there had. He remembered the story now. Barely a whisper among students. The 3rd floor had caught fire during a drill back in 2005. Some electrical issue. 1 teacher and 6 students died, trapped when the fire doors sealed shut. But Jamie also remembered that the fire had been put out, that there had been a memorial. So why did it smell like the fire had never stopped? He walked forward, drawn by the sound of weeping. One of the classroom doors was slightly ajar. Smoke curled from beneath it, swirling unnaturally. Jamie reached for the knob. "Tanya was right," he whispered. "This is a trap." Still, he opened the door. The classroom was in ruins. Desks melted into the floor. Windows blackened. But in the far corner, someone sat huddled. A girl in an old-fashioned school uniform, one the school hadn't used in decades. Her hair was matted, her hands covering her face. "Are you okay?" Jamie asked, stepping in. She looked up. Her face was charcoal, not just blackened. Made of charcoal, her eyes glowing orange like embers. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. Then the door slammed shut behind him. He turned just in time to see it seal itself, the knob twisting, warping, melting into the wood. The girl stood, her body cracking with the sound of burning wood. "We died in the drill," she said. "And every time the alarm rings, we try to warn you." Jamie backed up. "Warn us of what?" She extended a hand. "That it's not a drill anymore." The floor beneath him caved inward. Heat engulfed him. He screamed. And then he was on the grass outside, breathing heavily, gasping, sweat pouring down his face. He was surrounded by students, teachers, emergency personnel. "Are you okay?" a paramedic asked, shining a light into his eyes. Jamie blinked. "The girl on the 3rd floor. She's trapped." Mr. McConnell stepped forward, face pale. "There's no 3rd floor," he said quietly. "Not anymore. It was sealed after the fire." Jamie turned to look at the school. There were only 2 floors, but just for a second, he saw a 3rd row of windows, flickering red, and a girl staring down from them. Jamie couldn't sleep. It had been 3 days since the fire drill. That's what everyone still called it. Even though no one could explain why the alarms had triggered at 9:03 a.m. on a day with no scheduled test, or why emergency services arrived without ever being called. There were no burn marks, no evidence of smoke. Yet several students were sent home for panic attacks. A few were hospitalized for hallucinations. One girl, Emily Tran, was still missing. Her parents had been on the news, asking for help, their faces blanched with grief that bordered on disbelief. Jamie knew the truth even if no one else dared to say it. Emily never made it out of the building. He'd seen her. Not the real her, at least not anymore. The thing wearing her skin had walked out with the students and vanished minutes later. But the real Emily had been pulled back into the burning 3rd floor. He remembered the moment clearly now, even if it made no logical sense. When he turned around outside, dazed and sweating in the sun, he had seen her, staring out from the phantom 3rd row of windows. And then the windows disappeared. Tanya hadn't spoken to him since that morning. She didn't answer his texts. Marcus claimed he had no memory of the 3rd floor at all, just that everything got kind of dark. And then he was outside. But Jamie had dreams every night. They always started the same way. He's walking alone through the empty halls of Oak Ridge High. The alarm begins to scream, slow and stretched, like a record on the wrong speed. Red lights flash overhead, but the hallway never ends. It just gets darker. The lockers melt. The walls burn. And then the girl appears, the one made of ash and fire. "You shouldn't have opened the door," she says. Jamie always wakes up screaming. He started avoiding school. Told his mom he was sick, though she didn't press. Something in her face told him she didn't believe the lie, but she didn't want to hear the truth, either. Parents were like that, he figured, willfully blind to what scared them. But Jamie couldn't be blind anymore. Not after what he'd seen. On Friday afternoon, he made a decision. He packed a flashlight, his dad's handheld camcorder, and a Zippo lighter he'd stolen from his uncle's garage. Then he walked back to Oak Ridge. The building was shut down, pending investigation. A hastily printed sign hung on the main gate, zip-tied to rusting metal. The gate wasn't locked, though. He slipped through. The parking lot was empty. The windows were dark. For a second, it seemed like a normal, silent school. But then he heard it. The alarm. Faint. So faint he wasn't sure at first. But then it grew louder inside his head. He pressed his hands to his ears. But it didn't help. It wasn't a sound. It was a memory, dragging itself forward like a wet corpse. He walked to the east entrance. It was chained shut, so he circled the building. The gymnasium doors weren't chained, just locked. But Jamie had been in enough high school movies to know how to break in. He took the Zippo, held it to the base of the wooden frame, and waited. After 2 minutes, the lock housing warped enough for him to wedge his screwdriver in. With a painful twist and a lot of force, it popped open. Inside, the gym was vast and silent. The wooden floor creaked with each step. His flashlight danced across the bleachers. A basketball sat abandoned near half-court. He walked straight to the far doors that led to the stairwell. They weren't locked, and neither were the fire doors. That was the first real confirmation. Something wanted him back inside. He ascended quickly, skipping the second floor entirely. The stairwell to the third level was still intact, though it had been sealed off long ago. A rusted sign warned restricted access. Floor closed in faded red paint, but the door wasn't locked. Jamie pushed. It opened. The third floor stretched out before him, just as it had in the dream. Walls blackened with soot. Desks melted. The air shimmered with invisible heat. But there was no actual fire, just the smell of it, the memory. He walked carefully, the camera held steady, recording everything. Dust clung to his skin. The further he went, the more warped the hallway became. The floor bent slightly downward. Gravity felt off, like the building tilted subtly toward the center of the floor. And that's when he heard the whispers. They weren't behind him or ahead of him, they were inside the walls. Soft and rhythmic, chanting in voices that sounded too young. Words blurred together. A warning? A ritual? He couldn't tell. Then a door opened on its own. Room 3C, the same room from his dream. He stepped inside. Nothing moved at first. Just rows of burned-out desks. A chalkboard still bore fragments of an old lesson. Stop, drop, and roll written in looping cursive, now partially melted. At the far end of the room stood the teacher's desk, charred black. Behind it sat the girl. Not the ember-faced ghost, but a real girl. Real enough, anyway. Her skin was pale. Her uniform old-fashioned. She looked up. "You came back," she whispered. Jamie's heart pounded. "Who are you?" "You saw too much," she said. "They tried to push you out. But the door stayed open." He stepped closer. Did you die in the fire?" She nodded once. "We all did." Jamie swallowed hard. "Why are you still here?" "We were forgotten." The air shifted. Behind her, smoke coalesced into shapes. Children, students, all dressed in old uniforms, faces obscured by ash. "They said it was an accident," the girl continued. "But it wasn't. The fire wasn't from wires or chemicals. It came from the drill." Jamie's throat went dry. "What do you mean?" "It was a test," she said, "for something older than the school. Something that lives inside the system. Every time the alarm goes off, it feeds. Just a little. Fear, panic, confusion. But that day something went wrong. The fire doors locked too early. The alarms didn't stop." She stood slowly. "And then we burned." Jamie stepped back. "I saw you," he said. "In the window. After the drill. You were watching." She nodded. "That's my job now." Suddenly, the other children began whispering. Fast.
Urgent.
The walls trembled. "They're coming," the girl said. "You stayed too long." Jamie turned. The hallway was gone. Just a corridor of smoke, shifting like waves. Inside it, shapes moved. Firefighters. But wrong. Too tall. No faces. Just glowing eyes and jagged mouths. "Run," she said. "But how do I stop this?" She stepped forward and placed a cold, ash-covered hand on his chest. "Remember us." Then she vanished. Jamie turned and ran. The hallway pulsed and groaned around him. Each door he passed slammed open, revealing melted classrooms, blackboards filled with blood, lockers that moaned. The stairwell door loomed ahead, but something stood in front of it. A firefighter, or the idea of one. Its helmet was fused to its skull. Its chest glowed like coals in a grill. In one hand it held a halberd made from a melted fire axe. Jamie raised the lighter, flicked it. A thin flame sputtered. The creature stepped forward. "Get back!" Jamie shouted, waving the flame. Paused, then shrieked. A horrible, high-pitched sound that made the walls crack. He lunged forward, pushing past it, burning the edge of his jacket as he slipped through the door. He tumbled down the stairs, screaming. The floor behind him collapsed. Smoke poured down, but he didn't stop. He ran through the gym, through the doors, across the lot. He didn't look back. Not until he reached the street. And there, standing behind the gate, were dozens of children, watching, all dressed in scorched uniforms. Jamie looked down at his camera. It was still recording, but the screen was static. Jamie didn't know how he got home. One moment he was standing outside the school's rusted gate, gasping for air, the whispering figures of ghostly students still fresh in his vision. And the next, he was in his bedroom. His shoes were caked in ash. His jacket smelled like charred wood. The camcorder was clutched in his trembling hands. He blinked. Everything looked normal. Posters on the walls, the hum of his old fan, the fading orange hue of sunset stretching through the blinds. It should have made him feel safe. Didn't. He sat down slowly and tried to play the footage. The screen flickered, and for a split second he saw something. His own face, terrified and lit by the flickering beam of his flashlight. But then the screen blurred again, white static fuzzing across the display. He scrubbed backward. The screen remained blank. Forward. Nothing. Only one thing stayed, the sound. The audio had recorded, and what he heard sent ice down his spine. The alarm, still playing. The same long, slow scream. Beneath it, the voices. Children's voices. Chanting something over and over, layered so densely it was impossible to separate individual words. But when he cranked the volume, isolated the channels, and slowed it down using an old editing app he had on his laptop, the meaning began to emerge. Do not forget. Do not forget. Do not forget. Over and over. A warning. A plea. Jamie leaned back in his chair, heart pounding. What happens if we do? He whispered. The answer came from behind him. They take another. He turned. No one was there, but a scorched footprint was burned into his carpet. Just one. The next day, he went to Marcus's house. Marcus looked different, paler, thinner, like he hadn't been sleeping. When he opened the door, he barely spoke, just let Jamie in with a nod and a wave of his hand. They sat in Marcus's basement, surrounded by old game consoles and half-drunk energy drinks. I remember, Marcus said suddenly, before Jamie could even speak. Everything. The third floor. The girl. The thing in the hallway. Jamie's breath caught. Then why didn't you say anything? Marcus laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. You ever try to tell the truth and realize halfway through that no one's going to believe you? That was me. I told my dad. He thought I was having a breakdown. Maybe we are, Jamie said quietly. No, Marcus said. We're the ones who didn't forget. He turned toward a small stack of folders on the coffee table. Newspaper clippings. Yearbooks. A dusty CD marked Oak Ridge 2005 Memorial Slideshow. I've been digging, Marcus said. There was a girl. Her name was Clara Avery. She was one of the 6 that died. Junior. Straight A student. On the honor roll. Her photo's in here. He slid a yearbook across the table. Jamie opened it to the marked page. There she was. The same girl from the 3rd floor. Pale, quiet smile, hair in a tidy braid. The name Clara Avery, printed below her photo in clean, serif font. Jamie felt sick. I saw her, he whispered. She talked to me. I think she's stuck, Marcus said. All of them are. And every time that alarm goes off, every time a drill happens, they try to get out. They use it. Like a key. Jamie looked at the CD. What's on that? I found it in a junk drawer at my uncle's place. He used to work in admin. It's from the memorial they held after the fire. They played it once at assembly, then never again. Jamie loaded the disc into Marcus's old desktop. A simple slideshow began to play, soft piano music under photos of students, smiling teachers, sports teams. Then came the tribute. In loving memory of our fallen, the screen read. Jamie counted the names. 7. but the records had always said 6. Wait, who's the 7th? Marcus clicked pause. That's the thing. There's no record of a 7th student. No obituary. No parent interviews. Just this. The photo was grainy. A boy with dark eyes. No name. No class photo. I think he didn't belong, Marcus said. Not a student. Not a teacher. Just there. Jamie stared at the boy's face. The longer he looked, the more distorted it became. Like his eyes were moving. The screen blacked out. The computer crashed. When it rebooted, the desktop wallpaper had changed. It was the photo of Clara, but twisted, her eyes glowing red, her smile burning away into a snarl. Jamie pulled the plug. They sat in silence. Then Marcus said, "We need to go back." Jamie looked at him like he'd gone insane. "Are you kidding? If we leave it like this, it'll happen again. You saw what happened during the last drill. Kids got stuck in there. The building almost kept them. We have to find out what they want. Finish what was started." Jamie rubbed his eyes. "Or we get pulled into a fire that never goes out." Marcus stood. "I don't think it's the fire that kills you. I think it's the forgetting." That night, they returned to the school. This time, they came prepared. Flashlights, bottled water, an actual printed layout of the building. Marcus brought his dad's police scanner and a GoPro strapped to his chest. The gym doors were still broken from Jamie's earlier visit. They slipped inside, the lights barely functional. "Same plan?" Jamie asked. "We head to the 3rd floor," Marcus said. "Find Clara. Ask her what she wants." Jamie hesitated. "And the others?" "Let's hope they're not awake." They moved through the building slowly. It smelled even worse than before, like something deep and ancient was rotting between the walls. The school felt alive, breathing in gasps, settling with groans, shifting as they walked. At the 3rd floor stairwell, they stopped. The door was already open. A trail of ash led inward. They followed. Room 3C was just as Jamie remembered. Desk scorched, chalkboard cracked. But this time, Clara wasn't sitting at the teacher's desk. Instead, she stood facing the wall. Her voice echoed, soft and broken. "They forgot us. They closed the floor. They blamed the wiring. But we remember. We burned." Marcus stepped forward. "Clara." She didn't turn around. "I saw your name," he said. "In the yearbook. In the slideshow." Still no response. Jamie whispered, "Maybe she can't hear us." Then Clara turned. Her eyes were hollow. Her mouth opened, smoke pouring out. She screamed, not a sound but a memory. The sound of children burning, of metal warping, of an alarm that never shut off. The building shuddered. Doors slammed. Then Jamie saw them, figures crawling out from the smoke. Kids with melted faces, skin blackened like overcooked meat, eyes glowing like embers. One of them pointed. "New ones," he hissed. "They stayed too long." Jamie grabbed Marcus's arm. "Run!" But Marcus didn't move. He was staring at Clara. "I think I remember you," he whispered. Clara stepped forward, her features shifting. Her skin lightened. Her eyes dimmed. "You were there," she said. "You were in the room." Marcus collapsed to his knees. "I didn't mean to. I didn't know. I left them. I left you." Jamie froze. "Marcus?" Clara touched his head. The other ghost shrieked. The room trembled. The walls cracked. "Go," Clara whispered to Jamie. "Before they take you, too." Jamie ran. As he turned down the hall, he saw the 3rd floor shifting, corridors bending, the ceiling folding inward like burning paper. Clara stood in the doorway of room 3C, cradling Marcus like a child. Then the floor collapsed. Jamie screamed as fire roared behind him, heat searing his back. He dove down the stairs, landed hard, crawled through smoke. At the gym doors, he looked back. The 3rd floor was gone again. So was Marcus. Outside, dawn was breaking. Jamie staggered down the road. No one came. Jamie didn't return home that morning. He wandered the edge of the woods behind Oak Ridge High, where the smoke smell still lingered, even though the sky was blue and the sun had started rising like any normal day. But it wasn't normal. Not anymore. Marcus was gone. Taken, claimed, absorbed by the very fire they tried to understand. Jamie didn't even know what he'd seen. The flames that devoured the third floor had made no noise. There was no destruction left behind, no rubble, no physical evidence. And yet Marcus had disappeared in front of his eyes. He kept walking until his legs buckled, and he collapsed beside an overgrown drainage ditch. For an hour, maybe more, he sat there in silence, mind empty. He wanted to cry but couldn't. Not from shock. Not from denial. It was something else. He was numb. When he finally stood and began the walk home, he knew he couldn't pretend anymore. His mother would know something was wrong. His clothes were torn and smeared with soot. He had Marcus's GoPro slung around his chest, but he didn't remember taking it. And when he pressed the power button, the screen flickered and shut down. Something had shorted it out. The house was quiet when he arrived. Too quiet. It was mid-morning, and usually by now his mom would be on a call or blasting music while cleaning. But the silence felt dense, pressurized. Jamie stepped inside and immediately noticed the change. The hallway felt longer, narrower. The thermostat display flickered. A faint, familiar scent wafted through the vents. Burnt paper and scorched plastic. He swallowed hard and headed to the kitchen. The fridge still hummed. The calendar on the wall read Saturday, though Jamie couldn't remember if that was accurate. He'd lost track of days. Then something moved behind him. He spun. The hall was empty, but the air shimmered near the staircase, like heat rising from pavement. "Mom," he called. No answer. He moved cautiously to the stairs. His room was on the second floor. Her room, too. He placed a foot on the first step, and it creaked. A loud, drawn-out moan that echoed in the silence. He ascended. The second floor was darker than it should have been. The blinds were closed, but light should have seeped through. Instead, a dull red glow lit the walls. Jamie's heart pounded. He opened his mother's door. Empty. Bed made. TV off. No signs of anyone. Then he noticed the photo frame on her nightstand, him as a baby sitting on her lap. The glass was melted, warped. Something was wrong. Something was here. He turned toward his own room. The door was ajar. He pushed it open. The walls were covered in writing. Charcoal smears, scrawled in jagged loops. Some were messages, others symbols, circles, triangles, eyes. But the words were the worst. "You let him burn. Do not forget. It's your turn. Fire drills are not drills." On the bed, the GoPro blinked. Jamie stepped forward. It had powered on by itself. The screen showed static, then shapes, then a frame. Clara. Her face filled the screen, but her features twisted and shifted, glitching as if the device couldn't process her entirely. She wasn't speaking, but her mouth moved. And then the sound began. Not from the GoPro, but from inside the walls. The alarm. Slow. Groaning. That same unnatural cadence. Jamie backed away. "No," he whispered. "Not here." But the hallway behind him had changed. The carpet was gone. The floorboards were charred. Smoke oozed from the vents. The ceiling dripped black ichor. His home was gone. He was back inside the school. Or something that looked like it. "Stop," he whispered. "Wake up. Wake up." But he was already walking. The house twisted behind him. The hallway stretched, lockers appearing on the walls, scorched and bent. Doors emerged, classrooms, each slightly open, dark within. Jamie tried turning back, but the hallway behind him had vanished. He was trapped again. Footsteps echoed ahead. He crept forward, heart thudding. A locker door burst open. A charred hand reached out. Jamie screamed and sprinted, turning blindly at the next hallway. But the halls twisted in impossible ways. Stairwells led to ceilings. Classrooms looped into each other. The building didn't follow geometry anymore. He finally stumbled into a large room. The auditorium, or what was left of it. Rows of burned seats. A warped stage. And there, under a spotlight that flickered with red flame, Clara. But she was different now. Her eyes were completely black. Her body burned constantly, smoke rising from her hair. In her hands, she held a yearbook, its pages smoldering. "Why did you leave him?" she asked. Jamie shook his head. "I didn't. I couldn't save him. You watched. I tried. You let him burn." The audience began to appear, rows filling with students, all scorched, all silent. Then one stood, Marcus, but his face was twisted, half melted. His eyes burned orange. "You knew," Marcus said. "You knew I remembered her. You knew she would take me."
No.
Jamie cried. "I thought we could help." "You thought you were the hero," Marcus hissed. "But you were just the match." The auditorium groaned. The spotlight brightened. Clara stepped down from the stage, book still in hand. "Jamie Phillips," she said. "You've been marked. The alarm chose you." Jamie backed away. "Please, I just want to stop this. Let them go. Let me go." "You started the drill." He froze. "What?" "You entered the building. You triggered the system. You opened the door." Jamie's mind reeled. "I didn't. No. I was trying to find the truth. The truth is fire," she whispered. And then the book opened. Pages flipped rapidly. Photos inside burned one by one. Names whispered themselves aloud. Clara Avery, Miles Tomlin, Emily Tran, Marcus Bentley, Jamie Phillips. His photo appeared. Jamie fell to his knees. "You can end it," Clara said. "One of you always can. But only if you stay." "What do you mean?" "One stays. The rest forget. Until the next time." Jamie wept. "Please. You have until the alarm ends." Then everything went black. He woke up in the grass outside the school. Sunset. His body ached. His clothes were intact.
No as. No burns.
He sat up. Sirens blared in the distance, but not toward him. Toward the north side of town. He turned. Oakridge High stood silent. Only 2 floors.
No smoke.
No trace of what had happened. His phone buzzed. A message from Tanya. "You okay?" School reopened. They cleared it. "Everyone's back Monday. Hope to see you then." Jamie stared. Back? The school was reopening? Like nothing happened? He checked the calendar. 2 weeks had passed. No one remembered, except him. And the alarm still rang in the back of his head. Jamie didn't return to school that Monday. He sat at his desk long after the bell that no longer reached him had rung, staring at the GoPro he'd duct-taped to his monitor. It hadn't turned on again. The static video was gone. No files. No battery life. But somehow he couldn't bring himself to throw it away. The text from Tanya had said, "Hope to see you then." And that phrase kept replaying in his mind. It was the wording. Not "see you Monday." Not "let's talk." Just that hollow, distant phrase, "Hope to see you then." She didn't know. None of them did. Marcus had vanished. Not just from school. From existence. His name was no longer listed on any school websites. No memorial, no photos, no attendance records. Jamie had called his house twice. The first time it rang endlessly. The second time a woman picked up, but not his mother. She'd said, confused, "I'm sorry, who?" And then hung up. Gone. Erased. Jamie printed what he had. Yearbook scans, the melted CD frame he'd salvaged, Clara's image. He pinned them across his corkboard and strung red thread between them, as if doing so could make the shape appear, like drawing a summoning circle for forgotten souls. But all he saw was a spiral, a loop, fire, drill, forget, fire, drill, forget. Only one person remembers each time. One stays behind. One opens the door. And now it was his turn. By Tuesday, the pressure in his ears had returned. A low-frequency hum, like something vast moving beneath the floorboards of the world. He knew it was the alarm, trying to start again, trying to open. He went to Oak Ridge anyway, not because he wanted to, but because something compelled him. It wasn't possession. It wasn't fear. It was duty. He stepped onto the school grounds as students poured through the gates, laughing, talking, scrolling on phones. None of them remembered the last 2 weeks. To them, it was just the start of a short week after a gas leak evacuation. That's the story that had circulated, fabricated, official. No fire.
No ghosts.
No missing students. He watched Tanya approach from across the lot. She waved. He waved back but didn't move. "Where've you been?" she asked, breathless. "Nowhere. You just disappeared." He wanted to scream, to tell her everything, but her eyes were clear. No residue of trauma.
No lingering shadows.
She didn't remember, and if she did, it would pull her back in. So he said only, "Been sick. Getting better." She nodded. "Glad you're okay." As they walked into the building, Jamie noticed something. The 3rd floor was still gone. The stairwell to it had been sealed, welded shut with a flat metal plate. The floor number had been removed, but the hall leading toward it was open again. Clean, lit, even repainted. New lockers, new doors, but the angle was wrong. He knew. He'd walked these halls dozens of times, and now the geometry was just slightly off. Like a mirror image had been imperfectly pasted over the original. He stood still. Then the alarm blared. Students froze. "Fire drill!" someone shouted. But this time, Jamie heard something else behind the siren. Another frequency. A second signal layered beneath. Like a voice. He turned to Tanya. Her face had gone pale. "You hear it too," he whispered. She nodded. "I remember now." "No, no, no, don't." But it was too late. The red lights flickered. The walls groaned. And behind them, the doors to the 3rd floor unsealed, sliding open silently. Smoke drifted out. Students didn't notice. They continued shuffling toward the exits, teachers yelling instructions, admin pointing toward emergency routes. A regular drill. Another run-through. Another chance to forget. Jamie turned and faced the stairwell. He saw Clara there, her form less burned now, clearer, almost calm. "You came back," she said. "I never left." "This time," she said. "You can choose." He blinked. Choose what? To stay or to end it? The hallway around him twisted. He stood at the crossroads of memory and oblivion. Jamie took a deep breath. "Then let me choose." Behind him, Tanya called his name, but the sound grew faint, like it was being pulled underwater. Jamie stepped forward. Clara nodded. The 3rd floor opened wide, swallowing the light, and the alarm stopped. Just like that. No one noticed. Outside, students laughed and talked again, dispersing into the parking lot. The drill was over. The day resumed. In the admin office, a new student was added to the database. Placeholder name, Clara Avery. No one questioned it. The system accepted her without issue. In a janitor's closet, a scorched GoPro blinked once and shut off. And somewhere in the library, a forgotten yearbook fell open to a blank page, where, in freshly inked lines, the name Jamie Phillips was written. Oak Ridge High returned to normal, until the next drill. When the fire alarm went off at 2:11 a.m. in the Grayson Hall dormitory, nobody thought it was anything serious. The building, a squat brick complex on the edge of Pinefield College's campus, was known for its aging pipes, short-circuiting power grid, and alarm system that randomly screamed to life in the dead of night. It had happened 3 times in October already. The RA, Lily Mendoza, usually just rolled out of bed, did a sleepy sweep of the floor, and reset the box with her key. But this time, Lily wasn't responding to the radio, nor did the alarm cut off after the usual 3-minute window. Kept going. Samantha Ives, sophomore and psych major, sat up in her bed groaning. Her roommate, Juno, yanked the pillow over her face. Again, Juno mumbled, Jesus, what are we, rats in a lab? Sam pulled her hoodie over her tank top, slipped into her boots, and checked her phone. No message from Lily. Usually, Lily was on top of it, sending out a quick false alarm. Go back to bed. But the floor's group chat was silent. And then Sam noticed something strange. The power was still on. Lamp glowing softly in the corner, her fan spinning. But the hallway light that bled under the door flickered like a dying candle. She opened the door. The hallway was filled with smoke. Not thick. No coughing, no heat. But dense enough to make her blink and take a step back. Juno? Her roommate sat up slowly. Is that smoke? Sam didn't answer. She stepped out. The hallway felt too quiet. The alarm was still going, but muffled now. Like it wasn't coming from the speakers anymore, but from inside the walls. She walked to the stairwell at the end of the hall. When she tried the door, it didn't open. Locked. She frowned. They weren't supposed to lock fire exits. Ever. She knocked. No answer. Across the hall, Sam noticed room 212's door cracked open. That was Lily's room. She stepped inside. Empty. The sheets on the bed were messy. Her laptop was open, mid-call with a paused video feed. A bag of chips lay on the floor, crunched. One of her socks was near the window, the curtain fluttering. Sam stepped closer and saw something on the wall. Scratches. Thin, vertical lines. They reminded her of claw marks. She backed out and re-entered the hallway. Now Juno was standing outside their room, frowning. What the hell is going on? She asked. I think something's wrong. Sam walked to the elevator out of habit, even though they rarely worked. The display above it read, burn. Not out of order. Not numbers. Just the word, burn. She pressed the button. The door opened instantly. Dark inside. Juno peered in. That's not normal. Sam felt her chest tighten. What floor are we on? She asked suddenly. Third, Juno said. But that wasn't right. Grayson Hall only had 2 floors. They looked at each other. Then the elevator dinged again. The interior light flickered on. Inside stood Lily. But something was wrong. Her RA uniform was torn. Her skin was gray. Her hair hung in wet strands over her face. And her eyes, they weren't eyes. Just empty sockets glowing faint red. She stepped forward. Sam screamed and slammed the elevator button again. The doors closed. Silence. Then a voice behind them said, You shouldn't have come back. They turned. No one there. The fire alarm went silent. Not slowly. Not gradually. It stopped like someone cut a wire. But then came the sound of humming. Children's voices. Singing a song in a language neither of them knew. Okay, we're done, Juno said. This is a prank. A viral video. We're being punked. Sam pulled out her phone. No signal. Of course. Let's try the back stairs, she said. If this is a false alarm, we'll call campus police from the quad. They walked quickly past the flickering hallway lights. The floor felt soft. Not like it was sagging, but warped. Like the carpet was covering something liquid underneath. The walls, too, seemed subtly pulsing, as if the building were breathing. They reached the stairwell. The door opened. Smoke poured out. But this time it smelled like meat. Burned meat. A figure stumbled from the stairs, falling against the wall. It was another resident, Craig, from 208. His face was raw and shiny, like melted wax. His lips barely moved. It got Lily, he whispered. The smoke isn't smoke. Don't let it in your lungs. He collapsed. Sam bent to help him, but when she touched his shoulder, he crumbled like ash. Gone. Juno screamed and ran. Sam followed. They darted down the hallway, turning corners blindly. But the layout had changed. Grayson Hall had been a simple rectangle. Now it was a maze. Hallways bent into unnatural curves. Doors led into looping closets. Exit signs pointed into blank walls. And the humming continued, now layered with whispers. Then a loud crash echoed from the far hall. Sam turned just in time to see one of the doors explode outward. A man in an old fireman's uniform stepped into view. But he wasn't alive. His face was black and bone. His helmet melted into his skull. He held a long iron rod in one hand, red hot at the tip. He raised it and pointed. Sam and Juno ran. They tore through corridor after corridor, past doors that slammed on their own, past mirrors that reflected only empty halls. They tried windows, but all were bricked over. At one point, they saw a hallway of dorm doors, each marked not with numbers, but with names. Names of people they knew. Then they saw one marked Samantha Ives. Her photo was pinned to the center, burned around the edges. Juno pulled her back. Don't open it. But the door was already opening. Inside was her room, but not as it had been. The walls were burned. Her bed was a pile of coals. And Lily stood in the center, weeping black tears. It's not a drill, she whispered. Sam slammed the door shut. I think we're still asleep, she said, hyperventilating. This is a dream. It has to be. Juno didn't respond, because she wasn't standing anymore. She was floating, lifted by something invisible, her limbs twitching. Sam screamed and grabbed her hand, pulling her down. But Juno's eyes were vacant. The smoke was inside her. And then the alarm rang again. But now it sounded normal.
Sam blinked.
She was outside, standing barefoot on the dorm lawn. All around her, students were muttering and yawning, holding phones, checking watches. Campus police strolled past. False alarm, one officer said. Power glitch triggered the system. Sam turned. Grayson Hall stood as it always had. 2 floors.
No smoke.
No fire. No signs of Lily, Craig, or Juno. She was the only one who remembered. And above the entrance, just for a moment, the elevator display glowed again. Burn. 3 days passed before Samantha Ives spoke again. Not out of trauma, though she felt it like a weight pressing down every hour, but because nothing around her seemed real anymore. The world had thinned somehow. She could touch things, hear voices, fake laughter, drone lectures, but none of it made contact. It was like watching life through a thick pane of smoky glass. Everyone else had moved on. The fire drill had been logged as a false activation by facilities, blamed on a humidity-triggered short in the basement wiring. They'd issued a half-hearted apology to the residents of Grayson Hall and sent a repair team to inspect the fire panel. The RA, Lily Mendoza, was on temporary leave. According to an email, no one questioned it.
No vigil.
No police inquiry. Sam asked a few students if they'd seen Juno. The most common answer was, who? Juno's bed was made. Her half of the room empty.
No posters. No laundry.
No charger cable. Nothing. Sam scrolled through her camera roll. Photos of Juno had disappeared. Not just blurred or glitched, gone. Even group shots now framed awkward gaps. Like Juno had never been there at all. But Sam remembered. Every conversation. Every coffee run. Every petty argument about who left hair in the sink. She remembered Craig, too. The boy who'd crumbled like burnt paper in the hallway. She checked the housing roster. Room 208 had no assigned occupant. Reality was being rewritten, and Sam was the only one still holding the original draft. The dreams started the 4th night. They weren't like nightmares. They weren't even dreams in the normal sense. Each began the same way. She was back in Grayson Hall, walking down a corridor lined with doors. A fire alarm was sounding, slow and stretched, echoing as if in a vast cave. The lights above flickered red. Each door bore a name, most of them unfamiliar, but a few stood out. Lily Mendoza, Craig Tomlin,
Juno Vedvire,
Samantha Ives. Her name always came last. In the dream, she tried to open the doors, but only her own would budge. And behind it, there was always fire. On the fifth night, she didn't sleep. She spent the hours between 1:00 and 4:00 a.m. walking circles around campus, bundled in a coat over her pajamas, earbuds in but playing no music. Just the comfort of pretending she was doing something normal. Something grounded. That's when she saw it. The fire truck, parked at the edge of the quad, half obscured by trees. No lights on, no crew, just sitting there. Its doors were old, painted red, but faded, like the pigment had been scorched off. The ladder on top was warped. The rear tires had melted rubber dripping onto the pavement. Shouldn't have been there. She walked closer. The cab was empty, windows dark, but a name was scrawled across the door in peeling white letters. Engine 3, assigned. Grayson Fire response, 1985. She took a step back. 1985 was the year Pinefield College had suffered a major dormitory fire. It wasn't Grayson Hall. It had been the old Lancaster Hall, torn down decades ago. 13 students had died. According to local legend, the fire had started during a drill. Sam backed away slowly. As she turned, a voice spoke from the darkness behind her. "You hear it too?" She spun around. A boy stood in the shadow of the pine trees. Tall, pale, eyes wide. "Who?" "Thought I was crazy," he said, "until I saw the smoke in your hair." Sam reached up. Her fingers came away gray. "You remember it," he said. "The hallway, the elevator." She nodded slowly. "Who are you?" "Name's Devin," he said. "Senior. I used to live in Lancaster Hall before it was demolished. But Lancaster burned down in the 80s. His mouth twitched. "Only the first time." Sam felt her blood run cold. Devin stepped forward. "They move the fire," he said. "Every few decades. New dorm. New name. Same thing." "Why?" "Because it's not about buildings," he whispered. "It's about us. The people inside. The ones who forget. Every fire drill is a test. It's not supposed to be real, but if someone opens the wrong door..." He trailed off. "Then what?" Sam asked. Devin's eyes darkened. "Then it becomes real." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded photo. It was a group shot. Students laughing in the grass in front of a building that didn't exist anymore. But Sam recognized one face instantly. "Juno." She pointed. "That's her." Devin nodded. "She was supposed to replace me." "What?" "One always stays. It's how the memory survives. The system, whatever it is, demands a sacrifice. A trade. If you remember, you get pulled in. But if you forget, you're free." "And Juno?" "She remembered too late." Sam clutched the photo. "Can we stop it?" Devin looked up toward the dorm. "There's one way, but it's dangerous. You won't be able to come back." "Tell me." He hesitated. "The fire lives in the alarm. It's not just sound. It's a signal, an echo of the original blaze. If you trigger it manually, force a drill, you can enter the memory while it's still forming. That's when it's weakest." Sam swallowed hard. "And then what?" "Find the fuse," Devin said. "The original spark. Cut it. Burn it. Seal it. Doesn't matter how. Just make sure it can't start again." "What if I get trapped?" Devin turned away. "Then you'll join the rest of us." He disappeared into the shadows. Sam stared after him. That night, she made a plan. She found the blueprints of Grayson Hall online, located the fire panel, searched through facility's old incident logs. There had been 6 unscheduled fire drills in Grayson over the last 10 years, each one between 2 and 3 a.m. She mapped them. They formed a pattern, a spiral. The center? Room 301, which officially didn't exist. Grayson had 2 floors, but Sam had been to the 3rd floor, even if no one else remembered it. She returned to the building just before 2 a.m. Quiet, empty, most students asleep. She carried a toolkit, a flashlight, and a single matchbook she'd found buried in the back of her desk drawer. It bore the Grayson Hall logo. the same one that hadn't been used since 1991. She reached the stairwell, climbed to the second floor, then stared at the wall where a third stair should be. Nothing, just brick. But she pressed her hand to it, and it was warm. She struck a match. The flame flickered, and the wall vanished, revealing a dark stairwell rising into the smoke. The alarm began to ring, and she stepped through. The third floor of Grayson Hall didn't exist in blueprints, inspections, or memories. But it existed. Sam stood on the landing, the air so thick with heat and memory that her skin prickled with sweat even though no visible flame danced. The floor beneath her was scorched. Melted tile fused to layers of blackened carpet. Fluorescent lights flickered above in stuttering spasms of red and orange. The walls were warped, charred and looping, clawed patterns that looked less like fire damage and more like something had tried to claw its way out or in. The alarm was louder here, not like a siren anymore, more like screaming, long, mechanical screams, as if the walls themselves were mourning. She stepped into the hallway. Every dorm room door was labeled with names she didn't recognize, except one. Room 301. It bore her name. Ives, Samantha, burned into the wood. She reached for the doorknob, then paused. Inside, she could hear whispering. Dozens of voices, chanting something rhythmic, like a ritual. Her hand trembled, but then she remembered Juno, and she pushed the door open. The room inside looked exactly like her dorm, but decayed, covered in soot, the mattress charred and soaked in stagnant water. Her books melted into ash on the shelves. On the desk, however, sat something new, a reel-to-reel tape recorder, old, from the 70s, maybe 80s. It was still spinning, though no power source was visible. The reels turned endlessly, slowly grinding out a sound. The fire alarm. Not a digital tone, but the raw, recorded version. Echoing, distorted, primal. She stepped closer. Above the desk, written in soot on the wall, "Do not let it finish." The tape played on. And then, from the bed, came a sudden creak.
Samspan.
Juno lay there, or something that wore her shape. Her skin was blackened, her hair gone. Her eyes stared upward, unblinking, gray and glassy. Her chest rose slowly with each breath, though steam hissed from her mouth. Juno?
Sam whispered.
Her friend's lips twitched. You shouldn't be here. I came to stop it. Juno's head turned stiffly. It doesn't want to stop. It wants to spread. The door slammed shut behind her. The tape machine clicked. The alarm pitch shifted, deeper now, slower. The reel spun faster. Sam grabbed the machine, yanking the cord. There was no cord. She ripped at the reels, but her fingers passed through them. Illusion. Memory. A construct of the fire's mind. Then the walls began to move. No longer solid, they melted and breathed. Hands reached through, clawing. Faces of students frozen in scream, stretching against the wallpaper like trapped ghosts. Sam backed away. Juno sat up. Only one person ever remembers, she said, voice hollow. They mark you. They burn your name into the wall. Then you're part of the signal. Sam raised the matchbook, her last real-world connection. The symbol on it shimmered in the flickering emergency light. Where is the fuse? She asked. Juno smiled. Follow the smoke. Sam turned and looked at the door. It was gone. The room no longer had exits. Only one way left. She struck a match. The flame flared, brighter than it should have, bright white. It illuminated the space behind the wall, revealing not wood or insulation, but a tunnel of bone. The flame didn't burn out. Sam stepped through. The passage pulsed around her like the throat of some ancient creature. Every few feet, she passed burned ID cards embedded into the wall. Student names long forgotten. Some from Pinefield. Some from schools she didn't know. It wasn't just Grayson Hall. It wasn't just Lancaster Hall. This had happened in dozens of places. Maybe hundreds. The fire had spread through the ritual of drills. practice disasters that bled into the real. Somewhere, someone had realized the alarms weren't just safety precautions. They were invitations, and something had accepted. Sam reached the end of the tunnel. She emerged into a furnace room. At least that's what it resembled. Red brick walls, massive iron valves, a central pit filled with slow-churning molten flame. Hanging above it, on chains made of ashen hair, was the alarm bell. The original. It didn't blink. It didn't glow. It simply rang. A deep, throbbing sound. And beneath it something stood. A figure, tall, humanoid, but coated in molten armor. Its face was a blank mask of scorched iron. On its chest, riveted in place, was a plaque. Drill Master. Sam stepped forward. You feed on the drills, she said. On our fear. The figure didn't respond. You take one person, every time. One person who remembers. The drill master moved slightly. Sam held up the matchbook. I'm here to burn the fuse. A single word rang from the bell. And oh, then it attacked. The drill master lunged across the chamber with inhuman speed. Sam dove, landing beside the pit of fire. She hurled the matchbook toward the molten center, but it caught nothing. The flames rejected it. Illusion. She stood and ran toward the pipes lining the wall. Steam hissed. One pipe bore a label, System Root, Initiation Cycle. The valve was locked with a metal key. She didn't have it. But then, behind her, Juno appeared, her hand outstretched. In her palm, a key charred and steaming. Do it, she said. Sam grabbed it and jammed it into the valve. Turned. The pipe hissed. The alarm faltered. The drill master shrieked, stumbling. Sam struck a match, held it to the exposed valve seam. Caught. The fire spread rapidly, climbing the wall, racing along the pipes, leaping to the ceiling. The chamber lit with roaring heat. The drill master flailed, screamed, collapsed, and the alarm fell silent. Sam woke on the dorm lawn, her hair damp with morning dew. She sat up, looked at her hands.
No wounds. No matchwork.
She turned toward Grayson Hall. It looked new, not just untouched, but renovated. A new sign above the entrance. Grayson Center for Emergency Sciences. And her phone buzzed. A message from Juno. Want to grab coffee?
Sam smiled.
Then paused. Checked her photo roll. All her pictures were back. The world had rewritten itself again. But this time in her favor. And she remembered everything. She was still the one. The keeper. The world moved on like it always did. Grayson Hall was no longer Grayson Hall. It had become the Grayson Center for Emergency Sciences, a repurposed academic building, remodeled and modernized in just under a week, if the emails were to be believed. But Sam knew better. You couldn't rebuild a dorm in a week. Not from the ground up. And certainly not erase the memories of dozens of students while doing it. But that was exactly what had happened. Sam sat in the atrium cafe of the new Grayson, sipping an overpriced cappuccino and listening to a couple of first years at the next table debate fire codes and evacuation flow patterns. A fire marshal seminar had brought them here, guest lectures, simulated drills, orientation videos. She glanced at the wall behind them. Mounted like an artifact was the original fire bell from the old Grayson Hall. It didn't ring anymore, but it vibrated faintly when she walked past. Juno hadn't brought it up. They'd met for coffee twice that week, talked about their classes, their shared psych professor's obsession with outdated Freudian theory. Neither of them said a word about the fire. The third floor, the drill master, the matchbook, but Sam could see it in Juno's eyes. She remembered, maybe not everything, but enough. They were both marked now. Only one keeper, Devin had said, but Sam had changed something. She'd broken the valve, burned the system, severed the alarm's connection to its host. Or so she thought, until the dreams came back. This time they were sharper, more vivid. No more vague corridors and melted dorm rooms. Instead, Sam found herself walking through other buildings. Dormitories she'd never been in. Schools she'd never heard of. Hallways echoing with the same twisted alarm. She saw names scratched on doors. E. Warren Edison High, 1993. M. Chong Baker Middle School, 2007. D. Bishop Kenmore Academy, 1980. Each one flickered with firelight. Each one bore a burned silhouette of a person standing just beyond the threshold. And always, somewhere in the distance, the whispering, "Keep us remembered, keep us remembered, keep us remembered." She'd wake gasping, sweating, the smell of burnt paper clinging to her pillow. The seventh morning, she awoke with a new scar on her wrist. 3 parallel lines. Clawed. Not deep, not bleeding, but real. She wore long sleeves that day, and when she checked her mailbox, she found a small envelope with no return address. Inside was a photo, old, black and white, a group of children standing outside a school building. At the bottom, typed faintly, Eastwell Elementary, 1951. Unaccounted students. For Sam flipped it over. 3 words, written in what looked like coal dust. "You're not done." She sat on her dorm bed for hours. The drill master was gone. She'd watched it burn. But this was something older, bigger. The fire was a symptom, a vessel. The drills were rituals, acts of remembrance, disguises for something deeper, something older than any school system. She pulled out a notebook and began to write. Names, dates, schools, patterns. Each accidental fire during a drill had occurred during specific phases of the moon, during specific windows of the year, usually early fall or late winter, and each time records blurred. People forgot. Only 1 or 2 survivors remembered, and usually not for long. She drew a map. Red circles marked the incidents. The pattern became obvious. Not random. A network, connected by alarm systems, schedules, rituals. A global entity hidden inside fire safety. Cult, maybe, or a force. She wasn't just the keeper. She was the firewall, and it was testing her. The next night, the dream was different. She stood in a dark room. In front of her, a massive boardroom table. Charred, warped. Seated around it were people in fire marshal uniforms, but their faces were shadowed. Projector turned on. Photos of dorms, classrooms, kids, burned structures, dates, names. One of the figures spoke, voice like gravel. Containment failed. The Grayson node burned longer than authorized. Another voice. She remembers. That wasn't in the protocol. A third. She severed the signal, but only partially. Then silence. The first figure turned to her. You want answers? She nodded. The lights dimmed. On the screen, she saw herself. Walking through the hallway, striking the match, entering the tunnel. You burned the tape, the voice said. But you didn't destroy the player. Sam's heart dropped. You're still connected. A new photo appeared. The drill master. But it wasn't alone. More stood behind it. Similar forms. Dozens. A council. Each wearing a different symbol. Alarm, extinguisher, hose, smoke detector. Guardians of safety or perversions of it. The fire was never the point, one figure said. The alarm was the door. She woke screaming. And the next day, campus announced a campus-wide drill scheduled for Friday, 3:00 p.m. Sam checked the calendar. It was October 13th. Friday the 13th. The entire campus was buzzing with anticipation on the day of the drill. Emails had gone out with bright red subject lines. Campus-wide fire safety drill. Mandatory participation. Professors canceled classes. Students joked on social media about burning for a cause. No one knew that a ritual centuries older than the school itself was about to take place beneath their feet. No one but Sam. She watched from the library's upper balcony as maintenance workers wheeled out portable speakers and cones. It wasn't normal procedure. Neither were the rows of unfamiliar vans parked at the campus perimeter. No logos, no state plates, just blank gray metal and tinted windows. They were preparing something bigger than a fire drill. Convergence. She'd seen it in her latest dream. A convergence of drills across multiple campuses. A network reset, as the charred figures around the table had whispered. Grayson was the first node. If they reset here, it would give them a new host, a new keeper, and Samantha wasn't ready to be erased. At 2:47 p.m., she met Juno on the campus green. Juno didn't say anything. She just handed Sam a small metal object, blackened, heavy, and shaped like a key, burned into its side. A single number. 0. The reset key, Juno said softly. Found it in my mailbox this morning. I think it's meant for you. Sam took it. The temperature had begun to rise. Not gradually, like a wave of heat pushing through the air. Students tugged at collars and removed jackets. Clouds passed overhead, too quickly, as if fast-forwarding. Light bent at odd angles. Reality was preparing to fracture again. They walked toward the old Grayson Bell now installed at the center of campus. It had been mounted to a polished metal pillar, placed beside a plaque that read, "In honor of those lost to flame, may we always remember." The plaque glowed faintly as Sam approached. The bell rang once. Everyone froze. Then the sirens started. But they weren't coming from the speakers. They came from underground, from inside walls, from beneath skin. Sam clutched the reset key and felt it burn against her palm. Not hot, alive, pulsing. The ground beneath her shifted. A crack opened across the quad, invisible to the students still moving robotically toward the exits. Only Sam and Juno stopped walking. "Look," Juno whispered. Across the green, one of the gray vans opened. Out stepped a man in a fire marshal's coat. But his face was too perfect, smooth, mannequin-like. He held a clipboard in one hand, a scorched axe in the other. More followed, some in security uniforms, others dressed as professors, all with hollow eyes and movements too synchronized to be real. "The council," Sam murmured. The sky darkened, the quad shimmered, the ground tilted, and just like that, the world bent. Sam blinked and found herself standing in the hallway of Grayson Hall again. Only this time, it wasn't her memory. It was someone else's. Everything was sepia-toned. Students wore clothes from the 1970s. Posters warned about fire hazards in dormitory lobbies. The fire alarm bell looked new, and someone else stood in front of it. A girl, maybe 19, eyes wide with fear, hands shaking. She pulled the fire alarm. The world ignited. Sam understood now. This wasn't a linear system. It was a loop. Each generation brought a new host. Each drill reopened the flame. The act of remembering was what kept the fire at bay, but the system needed forgetfulness to feed. Sam walked toward the girl. The world shook. Hallways flashed. Grayson became Lancaster. Lancaster became Eastwell. 100 schools, 100 burned hallways. She stood at the center of them all. The council circled her. "You are not the first," one whispered. "But you are the most stubborn," said another. "The key is not yours to use," said a third. Sam held it tighter. "You chose me," she said. "We offered the memory," they hissed. "You refused to forget. That is not the same." Sam raised the key. "What happens if I reset it?" she asked. "The loop ends," said the council's leader. "And with it, all those we preserved. I thought you fed on the forgotten. We contain them. Without the loop, they are lost. Without you, they burn." Behind them, she saw the faces. Juno, Craig, Lily, hundreds of others. Watching. Not angry. Not pleading. Just waiting. "I remember you," Sam whispered. "I remember all of you." And she turned the key. The world exploded. Fire didn't consume her. It opened. Light flooded through her chest. Names poured out of her mouth in a chant that wasn't hers. The ground cracked. The bell shattered. Sirens rose and then faded into song. And then silence. She opened her eyes. She was sitting in the Grayson Center atrium. Sunlight streamed through the skylight. Her coffee was warm, half full. Students walked past, talking, laughing. Normal. She opened her phone, checked the calendar. It was Monday. The fire drill never happened. She checked her photos. All there.
No estranges cars.
Her inbox, full of assignments. Her heart, steady. And yet, when she passed the old bell on the wall, it looked different. This metal was cracked. The plaque beneath it was blank. But someone had scratched 3 words into its surface. You remembered us. When the fire alarm went off during 3rd period at Marlow Intermediate School, most students reacted the same way they always did. Snapping shut their Chromebooks, groaning with exaggerated dread, and lining up without urgency while the teacher waved them toward the door with the same clipped instructions they'd heard a dozen times. But 12-year-old Ethan Weaver didn't move. He stared up at the flashing light above the whiteboard. His fingers clenched around the edge of his desk. The tone wasn't right. It sounded slower. Not in pitch, but in the way it pulsed, drawn-out bleats followed by empty silence, as if the system was catching its breath. "Ethan, let's go," his teacher said. Mr. Reed was halfway into the hallway, clipboard in hand. "Drill procedure. Come on." Ethan blinked, nodded, and stood. He was the last to leave. The hall was a river of students. Kids shuffled past posters of cartoon flames and fire safety slogans. A few joked and laughed, but most were quiet, eyes forward. At Marlow, drills were serious. After all, there had been a fire 6 years ago. It was always mentioned during Safety Week. The cafeteria incident, as the staff called it. A faulty microwave, a grease spark, and a flare that nearly took out half the kitchen. No one died, but a custodian named Mr. Harris had gotten trapped behind the service wall for 2 hours. Some said he never came back. Ethan had heard that story every year. But today he remembered something different. He remembered seeing someone in the back hallway the morning of the fire. A man in gear. Not like the firemen on the posters, this one wore black. His helmet warped like it had been left in an oven. He hadn't helped anyone. He just stood there, watching, waiting. That memory had come back with the first alarm tone. And now Ethan couldn't shake it. As his class exited toward the parking lot, the back hallway was gated off with folding barricades and red cones. No one ever walked back there. It had been part of the old building before the expansion, supposedly sealed off. But today the gate was open. Ethan saw it as he passed the intersecting hallway. The cones had been kicked aside. The yellow folding gate folded all the way against the wall. No signs. No staff watching. The hallway beyond was dark. A sign beside it still read, "Hallway closed, under repair, do not enter." But someone had smeared the words, "You already did." Ethan stopped. His teacher didn't notice. His classmates kept walking. Something whispered from the hallway. He turned. It sounded like someone calling his name. Ethan. Not a scream, not a shout, just a quiet, deliberate murmur. He looked back one more time at his class disappearing around the corner. And then he stepped through the barricade. The moment he entered, the hallway behind him disappeared. He spun, but there was only wall. Just wall. No door.
No cones.
No light. He faced forward. This part of the school hadn't existed for years. It had been decommissioned, sealed after the fire. But the lockers still stood, warped and rusted. The floor was covered in gray ash. The ceiling lights flickered with reddish hues. There were no windows.
No sounds.
Except the alarm, now softer, slower. Each tone dragged like a dying breath. And then came the footsteps. Ethan ducked behind a locker bank. The figure walked by slowly. A firefighter, yes, but wrong. He wore a blackened suit, melted in places, and his helmet bore no badge, No number. Just a symbol. A circle with a single downward-pointing triangle inside it. In one hand, he carried a fire axe. In the other, a child's backpack. He stopped suddenly, turned his head. Ethan held his breath. The man's helmet creaked as he tilted it to the side, listening. Then he walked on. Ethan waited until the steps faded, then crept forward. A doorway appeared ahead, marked Storage B. He didn't remember it from any building map. Inside, a single light bulb swung from the ceiling. Dust spun in the air like snow. On the floor were old boxes, crumpled warning posters, and a small table covered in melted trophies. And photos. Dozens of school photos, their edges blackened. He picked one up. A girl. 5th grade. Smiling. On the back, Laura M. Room 114, 2017. He knew that year. It was the year of the cafeteria fire. He picked up another. A boy, slightly older. His eyes looked terrified in the photo. D. Tran Room 209, 2012. Another fire year. He flipped through the stack. Each one matched a date, years when Marlowe had experienced a drill. But not every drill had been logged. One photo was of a custodian. Ethan recognized him. Mr. Harris. On the back. Found. 2016. He dropped the photo. Something rustled behind the boxes. He turned just in time to see a shadow dart out of view. "Hello?" he called. No answer. Then the alarm tone changed. It became a voice. Not from a speaker. From everywhere. Drill initiated. Evacuation failed. Doors locked. The hallway outside shifted. When he peeked out, it was no longer the old hall. It was the burned version. Flames crept along the walls, not consuming, just crawling, like fingers made of smoke. The floor felt hot. He ran. Down twisting hallways that shouldn't have existed. Past classroom doors that bore no windows. Some rooms echoed with screams. Others stood silent and empty, filled only with ashes shaped like children. At one intersection, he stopped cold. A mural painted on the wall. Bright colors. A cartoonish flame monster being defeated by a heroic firefighter. But someone had painted over it in black, "Drills are lies." Then the fire bell above it shattered, and the helmeted figure stepped into view again. This time it moved faster. It raised the axe. Ethan bolted. He didn't look back. He passed a hallway lined with mirrors, but his reflection wasn't right. In the glass, he saw a dozen versions of himself, burned, charred, melting. Each one reached toward him as he passed. At last he saw light. A door, slightly ajar, marked exit. He pushed through and found himself in the gym. Empty. The fire alarm still bleated overhead, but normal now. Coherent. Teachers were gathering students. His class stood near the bleachers. "Where were you?" Mr. Reed barked, grabbing his shoulder. "You missed roll." Ethan blinked.
No soot. No scorch marks.
He turned. The doors to the hallway were closed again. And above them, a security camera. Its lens cracked, still smoldering. Ethan stared at it. And then, just for a moment, the alarm tone shifted again. Just long enough to whisper, "One day, it will be your turn." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same image. The helmeted figure stalking through flame, carrying a scorched backpack, the strap trailing behind like a severed limb. The symbol on the helmet, the triangle inside a circle, glowed in the dark, pulsing like a heartbeat. He lay in bed with his blanket pulled up to his chin, eyes fixed on the red LED of his alarm clock. 2:36 a.m. He'd blink and it would jump forward. 2:44, then 2:57. The gaps in time felt wrong, as though the night had missing frames. At 3:12 a.m., the smoke detector in his room chirped. Not the full alarm, just a chirp, a slow single beep. He sat up. "Dad." No response. He got out of bed and stepped into the hallway. The house was silent.
No smoke. No smell.
Nothing. But the smoke detector chirped again. Then another beep from the guest room. Then the basement. One by one, the house's smoke alarms activated, not in unison but sequentially. A slow-moving wave of sound, traveling room to room. He turned toward the stairs, heart pounding. And that's when he saw them.
Bootprints.
Charred, black and wet, tracking from the front door across the rug. The shape of a firefighter's tread. Ethan backed into his room and slammed the door. The smoke detector above his bed hissed. Not beeped. Hissed like pressure releasing from a valve. He didn't sleep after that. The next morning, Ethan said nothing to his parents. He dressed slowly, hands trembling, and packed his backpack without thinking. When he slipped his lunch into the side pocket, his fingers brushed against something rough. A photograph, not his. A school portrait warped by heat. A girl smiling. Laura M. Room 114, 2017. The same one from the hallway storage room. He hadn't taken it. It had followed him. At school, he felt everyone watching him. Not students, teachers, admins. Even the janitor, Mr. Kaminsky, stared at him for too long when Ethan passed the water fountain near the gym. His eyes weren't angry. They were fearful, like Ethan had been marked. When third period came, Mr. Reed announced another fire drill. Ethan's skin went cold. "Didn't we just have one?" he asked. Reed frowned. "District policy. Follow procedure." This time the alarm was louder and slower. Again, no one else seemed to notice. They lined up, moved, filed into the hall. But when they reached the familiar hallway turn, where the forbidden wing had reopened, Ethan saw something no one else did. The cones were back. The gate was closed. But behind it, through the narrow slats, he saw Laura M. standing alone, her eyes blackened, her mouth open in silent scream. She held her own photo, and her other hand pointed directly at him. He stopped. A girl from his class bumped into him. "Move, weirdo." Ethan walked on, out the side door, onto the blacktop, into the drill formation. The principal read from a clipboard. "Good response time. Excellent movement. All students accounted for." He paused. "Except..." He turned. "Ethan Weaver?" Everyone turned to look. Ethan blinked. "I'm here." The principal's eyes narrowed.
No.
"You were already marked absent." "What?" "I checked the list." Ethan Weaver was already reported missing during the drill. A long silence. Mr. Reed looked pale. The nurse approached. "Come with me, Ethan." He followed. The nurse didn't speak as they walked through the front office. Then she veered away from the nurse's office. Down the hall. Toward the forbidden wing. The cones were gone again. The gate stood open. Smoke drifted across the floor in thin gray sheets. The nurse stopped. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "But you brought me." "I didn't bring you," she said. "You followed." Her eyes flickered black. And she vanished. Ethan turned. The hallway stretched again. No doors now. Only walls of scorched lockers fused shut. He ran. Each step echoed louder than it should have. Then voices. Whispering. 100 names. Each whispered in the same breath. He passed walls carved with graffiti. "Do not step out of line. Fire escape isn't real. You weren't supposed to see him." He stumbled into an open doorway. Inside the same storage room. The photos were still there. But now they glowed with heat. He picked one up. It was himself. Not from this year, from next. 8th grade. Taller. Thinner. His face, older. The back read, "Ethan Weaver, room 202, 2024. Pending." He dropped it. The wall behind the desk peeled open. A hole. He crawled through. On the other side, a vast room filled with alarms. Hundreds of them, stacked, wired, blinking. They all rang at different intervals. Each one matched a name. Each name echoed through the air like a lost prayer. A pedestal sat in the center. On it, a scorched binder. He opened it. Inside were forms. Fire drill reports. Each stamped with a red seal. Drill failed. Memory retained. Ethan turned to the back. The final page was blank. Except for one word, welcome. Behind him a door opened. The helmeted figure stepped through. But this time it wasn't alone. Behind it walked a line of children. Burned, hollow-eyed, silent. Each one carried a photo. Each photo was his. Ethan didn't run. He wanted to. Every nerve in his body screamed for it, but his feet wouldn't move. It wasn't paralysis. It was recognition. Somewhere deep inside, something whispered, "This is the place. You are meant to be here." The helmeted figure stood at the edge of the fire bell chamber. Behind it, the procession of children moved in unnatural synchronization. They weren't breathing, weren't blinking. They held his photograph like a sacrament, their faces frozen in identical half-frowns, expressions of disappointment more than pain. The figure stepped forward. It was the same one from the hallway, the melted gear, the downward triangle within the circle, the scorched axe clutched in one hand. But now it spoke, not aloud, inside Ethan's head. Threshold breached, memory retained. He clutched his ears, but the voice pressed deeper, vibrating his skull. "You were marked when you looked back. I didn't mean to," he shouted. "Meaning is not measured. Behavior is." The air shifted. The alarms stacked around the room each flashed once, one by one, as if scanning him. Weaver. Ethan. Room 106. Observation initiated. Status. Candidate. "What does that mean?" Ethan yelled. The children behind the figure lifted their arms in unison. The photos of Ethan rose like a wall of mirrors. On each one, a black triangle had been stamped over his eyes. "You saw the drill master. I didn't know what I was looking at." Few ever do. The helmeted figure walked to the pedestal. The binder burst into flames. The words didn't burn. They rewrote. Ethan Weaver, memory designate. The chamber trembled. Smoke hissed from the seams in the walls. From every corner of the room, other fire bells began to vibrate, not ring. The vibrations moved in sequence, forming words in his mind. One keeps the memory. One watches the halls. One must carry the smoke. The last phrase filled him with ice. Carry. What does that mean? Ethan cried. The helmet turned to face him fully. The visor melted away, revealing nothing. No face, just an endless tunnel of black flame. And from that tunnel, Ethan saw something. His reflection, twisted and older, wearing a uniform made of ash, an axe in one hand, a binder in the other. He screamed, and the world collapsed. He awoke in the nurse's office, sitting upright on the cot, sweat soaking his shirt. The lights were normal. The walls were pale green. Posters of first aid instructions lined the bulletin board. Across the room, the nurse typed quietly on her computer. She didn't look at him. I had a dream, Ethan said. The nurse paused. You passed out during the drill. I saw a room with alarms and a fireman, and you went where you weren't supposed to, she said, still not turning. He sat up. What is this place? What's happening to me? She stood, walked slowly to a filing cabinet, opened the top drawer, pulled out a folder, dropped it on the table in front of him. Inside, a single photo of Ethan, but it was old. The paper was yellowed, the image grainy. On the back, Candidate E. Weaver activation pending 2037. That's not possible, he said. That's years from now. The nurse nodded. You saw too much. We tried to redirect you, tried to mark you absent, but the system had already logged you in. I don't understand. She looked at him for the first time. Her eyes were hollow, not metaphorically, literally, just pits of black ash. You were supposed to forget. She turned and walked to the door, opened it. Outside, students passed by as if nothing had happened. Teachers talked.
Bells rang.
Go back to class, Ethan. But you'll know when it's your time. He stepped into the hallway. Everything looked normal.
No melted lockers. No cloth walls.
No black triangles. But as he walked past the art room, he noticed something on the student bulletin board. A drawing. Crayon on lined paper. A firefighter standing beside a boy. Both were faceless. And in the corner, the artist's name, E. Weaver. He hadn't drawn that. Ever. At lunch, he sat alone. Jasper, a kid from band class, walked by and glanced at him. Did a double take. You okay, man? You look pale. Yeah, Ethan said, voice distant. I heard you got lost during the drill. Something like that. Well, at least you didn't end up in the old wing. That place is cursed. Ethan looked up. What do you mean? Jasper shrugged. My brother said a kid disappeared there once. Like during a drill. Never came back. No one even remembered his name after. Ethan's stomach turned. What year? I dunno. Like 2017? Ethan closed his eyes. Laura M. Room 114, 2017. Do you remember her name? Who? Ethan didn't answer. That night, he found a mark on his wall. Burned into the drywall behind his backpack hook. A circle. With a triangle inside it. No one else saw it. Not his parents. Not his teacher when he took a photo to school. The mark only existed for him. The following week, another fire drill was announced. Ethan knew what would happen. He wouldn't run. He wouldn't stray. He would walk the line. He would forget. He would pretend to forget. Because now he understood. The fire was never the danger. The memory was. Ethan counted the days. Not school days. Not weekends. Drills. There had been 3 since his encounter with the fire bell chamber. 3 perfectly normal, faculty-approved, district-standard drills. Whistles, flashing lights, controlled exits. Everyone filed out. Everyone filed back in. But every time Ethan saw shifts. Not in the buildings. In the people. A student would suddenly be missing. No big announcement. No memorial. Just gone. A desk left empty. A name removed from the seating chart. No one noticed. Not even the teachers. But Ethan kept a tally in his notebook. October 12th. Natalie B. Room 112. Gone. November 3rd. Brian C. Room 208. Gone. December 5th. Devin R. Art class, 3rd period. Gone. Each time a drill had occurred. Each time Ethan had tried to speak up. And each time he'd been met with confused stares. Who? What kid? Are you sure they were ever here? The only proof he had were the drawings. After every drill, a new crayon drawing appeared on the student bulletin board, always taped in the same corner. No name, no date, just the image of a burning hallway and a child. Sometimes one, sometimes many. Standing alone as the flames drew closer. One image showed a classroom door open just a crack. Inside, a red triangle glowed. Ethan stopped asking questions. Instead, he watched. He studied the fire alarm boxes, how they hummed softly when he walked by. He began sketching their shapes during study hall, tracing their vents, noting the patterns on their casing. He even discovered an old one in the janitor's closet. Disconnected from the wall, rusted, but still warm. Inside the cover plate, someone had carved a message. Don't press it unless you mean it. The phrase burrowed into Ethan's mind. He began dreaming again. Each night, the same hallways. Only now he wasn't running. He was patrolling, wearing boots that left black tread marks, holding a clipboard, staring down at faces as students filed past, unable to see him, a silent overseer. And always, at the end of the dream, he turned toward a closed door. One marked, Candidate storage. He would reach for the knob and wake up. The week before winter break, a new student arrived. Her name was Riley Quaid. She transferred from a charter out west. The principal had said. No details. No district records. Ethan noticed immediately. She didn't flinch at the alarm drills. She didn't look around, didn't plug her ears or grumble like the others. She watched the exits, counted students. Once, he caught her mouthing something under her breath as the alarm blared. He read her lips. Do not forget. Do not forget. Ethan approached her during lunch. You're not really new, are you? He asked. She looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. You remember, she said. He nodded. They told me I wasn't the only one, she continued, that someone else made it past the bell. I didn't believe them until I saw the mark. Ethan tensed. What mark? She reached under her collar and pulled the edge of her shirt down slightly. There it was, the triangle inside a circle. Black, perfect, branded on her shoulder like a brand. I got it the night I refused to leave during the drill, she said. Back in Arizona, I followed the smoke instead of the exit signs. Ethan lowered his voice. Do you know what it means? Riley's eyes darkened. It means we're being watched. Not just by them, but by something older. Something in the alarms themselves. The drill master? She shook her head.
No.
He's a vessel. A guardian. He's like us, only farther gone. The real force is older than fire codes. Older than sirens. Then what does it want? She paused. To be remembered. The phrase sent chills through Ethan. He remembered what the nurse said. You weren't supposed to see him. He remembered the photos that followed him home. The notebook full of names no one else recalled. Why us? He asked. Because we didn't run, Riley whispered. Because we didn't forget. That night Ethan dreamed again. But it was different. He stood not in the halls of his school, but in a wide, circular room made of old brick and iron beams. Fire bells covered every inch of the wall, wired into one another like a nervous system. At the center, a chair, empty, waiting. He felt the key in his pocket. He didn't remember picking it up, but it was there, heavy, warm, etched with a triangle. A voice echoed across the bells. Candidate hashtag 4371, Ethan Weaver, suitability pending. And then a shriek. One of the bells shattered. Sparks flew. From the far side of the room, the drill master emerged. But it didn't move toward Ethan. It bowed, slowly, deliberately, as if acknowledging something new. Ethan stepped forward, sat in the chair, and woke up screaming. The next morning, the principal's voice came over the intercom. Attention students and staff, please be advised we will be conducting an unscheduled fire drill during fourth period today. Please follow established procedures. Ethan stood up from his desk. His fingers burned where the key had been in the dream. And outside, the sky was black with smoke, though no one else seemed to notice. The fire drill began at 10:47 a.m. Not 10:45, not 10:50. 10:47 exactly. Ethan knew this wasn't a mistake. That timestamp had appeared in his notebook 4 nights ago. He hadn't written it, but it had been there when he woke, in red ink at the top of the page, circled 3 times. When the alarm rang, the tone wasn't just slower. It layered. At least 3 tones, all stacked, echoing out of sync. One was the district standard. One was deeper, almost mechanical. The last was a human scream, distorted into a siren. Riley turned to Ethan as their class stood to evacuate. This is it. He nodded. We go down together. Mr. Reed waved them into the hallway, oblivious to the way the lights flickered not in flashes but in Morse-like pulses. Ethan caught a fragment of the sequence and whispered it aloud. Remember, remember, remember. The hallway stretched in that impossible way again. The lockers elongated, their vents warping into grimaces. The tiled floor shimmered like black water. Students moved like shadows, slow, foggy, unaware. Ethan and Riley stepped out of line. No one noticed, not even the principal, who stood frozen mid-sentence outside the admin office, lips moving silently in reverse. They made for the forbidden wing, except now it wasn't blocked. There were no cones.
No gate.
Just a long, straight hallway coated in ash. The walls pulsed with heat, and on either side old classroom doors opened one by one, revealing students inside. But these weren't students from Marlowe. They wore clothes from different decades. Some in suspenders and collared shirts, some in outdated school uniforms, some in gray gym suits. Each room was a fragment of a school long erased. They stared at Ethan and Riley as they passed, their mouths silently repeating one phrase. "You remember us," Riley whispered. "These are the retained. The ones who didn't forget?"
No.
The ones who weren't allowed to forget. They reached the central chamber. Ethan recognized it from the dreams. Circular, brick walls, hundreds of fire bells. At the center, again, the chair. And now the drill master stood beside it. Still, waiting. Ethan turned to Riley. "You coming with me?" "I came as far as I could," she said. He felt panic. "What does that mean?" "I was a failed candidate," she said, stepping back. "I saw the gate. I followed the smoke. But I ran. You didn't. You were marked. But I didn't choose." The bells chimed in perfect sync. The voice returned. "Candidate hashtag 4371. Ethan Weaver, memory bearer. Signal steward. Hallway observer." The chair pulsed. Ethan turned toward it. One bell above the chair opened like an eye. Inside it, a keyhole. He pulled the key from his pocket. It was glowing now, white-hot, but it didn't burn. He inserted it into the keyhole. Turned. The bells all rang once. And the drill master knelt. "Is this the end?" Ethan asked. Riley shook her head.
No.
"This is the part where you stop running." The chair accepted him. The chamber darkened. And then Ethan stood in the middle of a fire drill. Students poured around him, laughing, distracted. It was a different school, different time. He held a clipboard. His boots echoed as he walked. No one saw him, but he saw everything. Behind him, the sirens sang with perfect clarity. Each tone spoke a word. Watch. Listen. Remember. Ethan had become part of the system. Not consumed. Not erased. Embedded. He wasn't the victim anymore. He was the firewall. The last signal before forgetting. And somewhere, in another school, another student would hear a strange alarm. See a hallway too long. Catch a glimpse of a helmeted figure holding an axe and a clipboard. And maybe, just maybe, they'd look back. And if they did, Ethan would be there. Watching. Waiting. Not to harm. But to remember. Always. If fire drills ever felt a little too eerie, now you know why. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Have you ever seen something strange during a drill? I'll be watching.